Millions of Virginia homeowners are watching their electric bills soar, not because they are using more power, but because of what is happening inside thousands of windowless buildings that surround them. This is how one small town in Northern Virginia became the internet capital of the world, and why that decision is now costing ordinary Virginians hundreds of dollars a year with no end in sight. Most people have never heard of Ashburn, Virginia, and there is no particular reason they would have. 34 miles outside Washington, D.C., tucked into a county called Loudoun, the place carries no famous landmarks, no sports teams, nothing that would normally register. What it does carry is something almost no other place on Earth can claim, and that one thing is quietly dismantling the power grid for the entire state. Ashburn is now the data center capital of the world. On any given day, an estimated 70% of the world's internet traffic moves through this single community, which means every email you send, every video you stream, and every little question you ask. ChatGPT has a good chance of passing through Ashburn before it reaches you. Over the years, the area picked up a string of nicknames, like Data Center Alley or the dullest technology corridor. One author famously described it as the bullseye of America's internet. Across Loudoun, Fairfax, and Prince William counties, more than 300 data centers now operate, and none of that happened by accident. So back in the 90s, AOL moved its corporate headquarters to Loudoun County and poured massive fiber and energy investments into the ground with it. Virginia's state government recognized what was taking shape and pushed hard to accelerate it. And that's when the policy machine kicked into gear. A data center sales and use tax exemption arrived in 2009, letting companies skip paying sales tax on the expensive computer equipment filling these buildings. And back then, only 7 other states offered anything close to that. By 2014, Loudoun County rewrote its zoning rules to open more areas to data center construction, then launched a fast-track permit program designed to move approvals along faster than any competing region could match. That's where the problem started. The financial case for courting this industry looked airtight. Data centers pay property taxes but demand almost nothing back, like school seats, or roads being worn down by heavy trucks, or steady streams of emergency calls. Loudoun County now collects close to $600 million annually in data center tax revenue, which covers every dollar of the county's operating expenditures. But what nobody fully priced into that deal was the electricity, because each new building required an outrageous supply of uninterrupted power. And as more kept coming year after year, that demand grew into something Virginia's grid was never built to absorb. Before any of this connects to your monthly bill, I want to explain the raw scale of what these buildings consume. A small data center pulls about 18 megawatts of electricity at any given moment. For reference, that's the same draw as 4,500 homes, running simultaneously, around the clock. A large campus of interconnected buildings can exceed 1,000 megawatts, which puts it above Virginia's largest nuclear reactor at the North Anna Power Plant, a facility generating about 950 megawatts. All of Northern Virginia's data centers combined currently draw around 4,100 megawatts. In 2023 alone, Virginia's data centers consumed 34 million megawatt hours of electricity for the year, which was 35% more than Texas, the second-ranked state in the country. Dominion Energy serves over 2 million Virginia homes and currently handles power delivery for around 450 data centers. In just the last few years, it connected 70 new ones. Those 70 new connections alone carry the equivalent load of 650,000 homes. And this is where it gets worse, because the AI boom is now pushing everything into territory the Virginia grid was never designed for. In December 2024, Virginia's own research arm, the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, published the report that attached hard numbers to what many already suspected. If data center growth continues without new constraints, Virginia's electricity consumption will increase by 183% by 2040, nearly triple. Strip data centers out of that forecast entirely, and Virginia's electricity demand grows by just 15% over the same period. That is population growth, electric vehicles, commercial expansion, and all of it combined. Data centers alone account for the gap between 15% and 183%, which is why a JLARC researcher told the commission directly that almost all of that demand is being driven by data centers, not other things like population growth or electric vehicles. Every watt of that demand requires infrastructure to deliver it, like power plants, transmission lines, substations, distribution networks, and so on. None of that infrastructure comes cheap. Under Virginia's current billing system, those costs get spread across all customers. That meant when Dominion started building new power plants and transmission lines to serve data centers, the bill did not land exclusively on the data centers. It also landed on yours. Between May 2024 and May 2025, average Virginia residential electricity costs rose about 3%, from 14.95 cents to 15.41 cents per kilowatt hour. That increase sounds manageable on its own. None of that mattered once November 25th, 2025 arrived. That's the date Virginia's State Corporation Commission approved a Dominion energy rate increase that took effect in January 2026. For the typical residential customer, the monthly bill climbed by $11.24 in 2026, with another $2.36 per month added in 2027. That came on the heels of a separate interim fuel rate increase of $8.95 per month that took effect in July 2025. Combined, those increases pushed the average residential electric bill to roughly $165 per month. Dominion described this as the first base rate increase in decades. When a CBS 6 reporter pressed Dominion's spokesperson 3 separate times to quantify how much of the rate increase could be attributed to data center expansion, the spokesperson declined each time, saying the new rates reflect inflationary pressures and the increasing cost of grid equipment. Brennan Gilmore, executive director of Clean Virginia, put it differently. He said the demand created by data centers has touched every Virginian who pays an electric bill in one way or another, and that Virginia's electric consumption, if you take away data centers, is largely flat. And this is where the current increases stop looking like the story and start looking like the opening chapter. JLARC projected that residential customers could see generation and transmission costs rise by $14 to $37 per month by 2040 in constant dollars, an extra $444 per year, driven specifically by data center growth. Dominion's own 2025 long-range forecast goes further, projecting that monthly residential bills could climb from about $159 today to somewhere between $255 and $308 by 2035, and up to $381 by 2045. More than double. The Piedmont Environmental Council ran the math on what that means per household, more than $2,600 per year, going toward infrastructure built primarily to power data centers owned by some of the wealthiest corporations on Earth. Now here's the part that tends to make people the most angry, and it deserves its own moment. While Virginians face rising electricity bills partly to fund infrastructure serving data centers, those same data centers collect the largest tax breaks of any industry in the state. In 2025 alone, data centers across Virginia receive approximately $1.6 billion in sales and use tax exemptions on their computer equipment. JLARC examined this arrangement in their 2024 report and found the exemption only delivers moderate economic benefits, and in their words, does not pay for itself. Fiscal year 2023 tells the story plainly. Virginia lost almost $1 billion in tax revenue that year because of the data center exemption, and 82% of that handout flowed to just the top 5 data center companies. These are not struggling startups finding their footing. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta all operate heavily in Data Center Alley. Peter Anderson of Appalachian Voices framed the situation directly, saying residential customers should not be subsidizing these wealthy companies. The November 2025 rate decision did produce one new protection worth knowing about. The State Corporation Commission approved a new rate class called GS5, built specifically for large-scale electricity customers consuming 25 megawatts or more, aimed squarely at data centers. Starting January 2027, those customers must pay a minimum of 85% of their contracted transmission and distribution demand, and 60% of their generation demand, even in months when they consume less. They must also sign 14-year contracts with Dominion to lock in those commitments. The design is meant to prevent a scenario where a company proposes a massive data center. Dominion builds the infrastructure to serve it, and then the project never materializes, leaving regular customers holding the cost of infrastructure built for a building that never opened. Bipartisan lawmakers and consumer advocates called the new rate class a step forward. The problem was that many of them also said the State Corporation Commission did not go nearly far enough. The 2026 legislative session, still underway as of this video, reflects that frustration. Senator Louise Lucas introduced legislation that would allow the State Corporation Commission to shift certain capacity auction costs from residential customers to data centers. The SCC itself estimated that change would cut residential bills by about $5.52 per month, while raising data center rates by 15.8%. Other lawmakers pushed to phase out the data center tax exemption entirely. As of late February 2026, neither effort had reached consensus, and the session continues. Outside the legislature, 42 activist groups and more than 12,000 petition signatures in Virginia are pushing back against new data center construction. Nationwide, community resistance has blocked or delayed $64 billion in data center projects as of March 2025. The 3-member State Corporation Commission, an unelected board appointed by the General Assembly, holds the authority to make the most consequential decisions about how costs get divided. The Piedmont Environmental Council described what is at stake plainly, calling it one of the biggest decisions the SCC will ever make, and one that will have lasting impacts on all Virginians for generations to come. Now, the full picture requires acknowledging what data centers actually deliver, because the trade-offs are real. Every email, every streaming service, every navigation app, every AI tool runs on these buildings. And even many of the people actively opposing new data center construction acknowledge that their own digital lives depend on facilities exactly like the ones they are fighting. Loudoun County's $600 million in annual tax revenue funds schools and public safety for real families who live there. And on the question of current costs, the 2024 study by JLARC found that data centers are being charged accurately for the power they use today. The dispute centers entirely on who covers the cost of the infrastructure that has not been built yet, the power plants and transmission lines that will need to exist to serve the data centers currently under contract. University of Virginia energy economist Bill Shobe agreed with JLARC's findings that non-data center ratepayers are absorbing costs they should not be, and then offered the counter that tends to get less attention. He said, "That's fixable. It's fixable in the way we set rates." The structure producing these outcomes is not inevitable. Every piece of it traces back to policy choices, and policy choices can change. Here is where we started. Millions of Virginia homeowners watching their electric bills climb, not because they are using more electricity, but because of decisions made decades ago to turn one small county into the internet, capital of the world. What is unfolding in Virginia is a preview of what is coming for the rest of the country. As AI drives explosive new demand for computing power, data centers keep expanding in state after state, and everywhere they land, the same question follows: who pays for the grid upgrades they require? Right now in Virginia, the answer by default is the homeowner, the renter, the families who stood before the State Corporation Commission in September 2025 and testified that they were already skipping meals to cover their utility bills. The rate increases that hit in January 2026 are real and already on people's statements. The projections for 2035 and 2045 are genuinely alarming. The tax exemptions Virginia created to attract this industry cost the state nearly $1 billion in a single fiscal year, and 82% of that went to 5 companies. 70% of the world's internet traffic runs through one county in Virginia, and the people who live there are being asked to underwrite it. The only remaining question is whether the legislature in Richmond acts before the next round of increases arrives. And based on where things stand heading into March 2026, that answer is far from settled.